Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this webinar. This is one of many within the IRIS webinar series, and we're so excited to have our partner Vatech America join us on this webinar. We'll also speak to some of the services offered by another one of our partners, Amazon Web Services. And today we're really going to focus on ways that you can modernize your practice using different types of technologies, but really specifically using some advanced imaging and what that means overall for your practice. So without further ado, we'll introduce today's panel. We have Alex Federal, and he is the district sales manager for Vatech. We also have Jesse Clemens, who's a director of professional services here at IRIS, and I will also participate in today's panel. My name is Reggie Stevens, and I'm the CEO here at IRIS. And so really excited to have Alex and Jesse join me today for this timely discussion. And we're going to spend about 30 minutes talking through some information and sharing stories. And then we'll transition into questions that you all, some of you have already submitted, and then any additional questions that arise over the course of the webinar. So that said, I'd like to turn it over to Alex to tell us a little bit more about Vatech.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Alex Federal, and I'm the district sales manager for Vatech out of North and South Carolina. So who Vatech is, Vatech actually stands for Value Added Technologies. We've been around for quite a long time worldwide. We're in over 70 countries. We actually started as a sensor manufacturer and then began making CBCT units and two-dimensional pans and sensors, and we have quite a few imaging products. But a few things that we're really known for are the image quality. Due to the fact that we do make our own sensors, we're able to have vast quality control, and that allows us to be very well known for the incredible images that we put out, but it also enables us to have a much longer warranty than anyone else out there. So we actually cover our sensors and tube heads for a full 10 years, which is much longer than most units you'll see out there. And one of the other main things that we are known for is just our post-installation care. That is a top of mind for us, and I think it says a lot about that with who Vatech hires. So they really focus on hiring representation with clinical backgrounds. And what that enables us to do is really help you implement this technology into your practice. Rather than just slap a machine on the wall and give you a handshake, we're there holding your hand, helping you plan implant cases, and really working with you to help you get the most out of your devices. So those are a few of the things that we are really known for. Anyone who hasn't heard of Vatech, that is surprising and also isn't surprising on occasion, because we don't advertise. All of our growth has been very organic, based on word of mouth. If you go on Dental Town or Facebook groups, you always see just very positive things said about Vatech. So yeah, that's a little bit about who we are.
Great. Thanks, Alex. And we're really excited to be partners with Vatech. They are truly industry leaders, and we couldn't have selected a better organization to partner with respect to advanced imaging. And we also have Jesse Clemens, who is our director of professional services, and under his department falls our cloud division. And so we'll hear from Jesse on a bit about IRIS and a bit about specifically our cloud services.
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Jesse, and as Reggie said, I'm the Director of Professional Services here at IRIS Solutions. And while I may not be the biggest nerd at IRIS, I'd like to think that I'm in the running. I've been using AWS since about 2008, so I'm very familiar with the platform, and I've been excited to build it out here at IRIS and to use it to provide exceptional service and hopefully some cost savings to our clients. And I've got some things that I'm excited to talk about today, some features and services inside of AWS. And thank you. I'll turn it back over to Reggie.
All right, thanks for hitting it off, Jesse, and thanks for that summary. And so we're going to talk about the winning formula. How can you generate more money for your practice? And one formula is advanced imaging, more modern and reliable IT, delivers greater profitability to practices. And so what we are here today to share with you exactly why that is and how the pieces really fit together. So let's start with the first piece of the formula, the advanced imaging piece, and I'll turn it back over to Alex so that he can speak to how this looks from an advanced imaging standpoint.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we like to say we're curing blindness in the 3D space. There's just far too much that you cannot see in two dimensions, and with the technology, with how far it's come, there's really no reason any longer to miss anything. And so you're not only are you providing the best possible care for your patients, but you're also helping yourself. You're going to find far more dentistry to be able to perform. And I've actually, with that regard, I've had multiple doctors actually call their cone beam an ATM machine, to be perfectly honest, because of how much dentistry it's been able to find for them. So it's an incredible tool, whether you're starting to treat sleep apnea or getting into implants, endo. Even if I have multiple doctors who just restore implants, and it's allowing them to find a lot more cases. But there was actually a study done by Gary Cady, who's known as the $1 Million Dentist. And he is a doctor, but also a consultant. And he performed a blind study where he took numerous random Vatech users and took a snapshot of their production for 12 months prior to implementing cone beam, and then again 12 months after, and wanted to see what it did for their practice. And as you can see from the slide there, what he found was the treatment presentation percentage increased by 91%. So what that tells you is that they are finding more dentistry. They are getting more at bats. They're having more opportunities to show their patients what might be going on. And then they found that the treatment acceptance went up about 56%. So I've seen some studies out there that say around 47% of the population are visual learners, and they won't make a decision unless they can see what you're talking about. So it leaves nothing to the imagination, being able to utilize 3D imaging, as you can see by those numbers there, because they're not going to say yes if you have something that's asymptomatic. So if it's not a problem that hurts badly enough for them to treat, they're not going to do anything about it. But when you can show them what is going on and have that conversation about what will happen if it goes untreated, whether it be an abscess or even a restricted airway, for instance, then that really, really helps your case. It's also imperative for especially new doctors, maybe a doctor who's purchasing a practice from another doctor. You're coming in and you have a lot to prove to this patient base. And if your predecessor did not have 3D, or they did not diagnose as much, and you come in and you're telling them to treat this and to do this, a lot of your patient base is going to see you as someone who just wants to make money. But the reality is you are doing what's best for them. You are trying to help them as much as humanly possible. And so you really do need to be able to show them what you know to be going on. So that will really help with the treatment acceptance portion. And then the annual value of a patient percentage went up 63%. So the proof is there. We used to consider 3D one of dentistry's best kept secrets, but the secret's out. And I've seen it more now actually coming out of COVID. It's been nuts, and we are getting so many inquiries about 3D, and we feel a lot of that has to do with a lot of the downtime many doctors had, where perhaps they read up, they did the research, and realized to take that next step to recoup losses that were experienced during COVID, they need to find more dentistry. And there's no other way to do that without implementing 3D. So these numbers really help tell you that story.
Yeah, it's so true. I would say anecdotally, we've seen across our customer base that the customers who use advanced imaging have fared far better throughout COVID than those who do not, And so, these numbers certainly comport with our experience as well. But one question that we get often, and I'm curious about, is just some practical examples of this revenue increase. We hear about how it drives revenue and how it can drive profitability, advanced imaging, but how exactly does buying a machine immediately equal increased revenue? What have you seen? What examples do you have that you would be able to share?
So this first case was actually with one of my doctor's assistants, and I was there for training, and he had told me that his assistant, I think she had a previously endodontically treated tooth, number 3, and she was having a lot of pain, a lot of issues. And he showed me the PAs that they had taken, and you don't see anything. You don't see any issues. He said nothing looks abnormal. And I think we have images of that if you want to go to the next slide there. And so there, he showed me these 3 images, and you can go through all 3, and you don't really see much. You don't see much abnormality. He really couldn't say what was going on. So she was the very first scan on the cone beam, and it was a great example where it took about 2 seconds to see that there is quite a large abscess on the next image there. And I don't know if there's any way to enlarge or what, but if you can see that where I circled there, but it's a very, very obvious abscess. So that just shows that two-dimensional, it doesn't cut it. It really doesn't. You're missing about 50% of periapical abscess on 2D pans. And so you really don't miss much at all with 3D. So this is a perfect example. So he immediately clapped his hands when we saw that. He was like, "All right, great. Extraction, graft, and implant. We're doing it." And so that's the first case. But just again, great example of found dentistry. And ironically enough, this next case was actually in that same office on another one of his assistants, where I whenever I do trainings, I like to have guinea pigs, and I picked one of the assistants to be a guinea pig and have a scan done so that one of the other assistants could position her. And I hear this all the time as well. She said it's going to be a very boring scan. I don't have any dental work done. She's in her 40s. That's fine. This is for training. I'm not looking for anything. And as soon as the scan came out, I turned to her and said, "I bet you have a lot of problems breathing through your right nostril." And she looked at me like I was crazy. Like, how did you see that? And the other staff members started laughing. And one of them said she complains about that, 50 times a day. And the assistant told me she hasn't been able to breathe properly for years, and it's been such an annoyance. And so I scrolled through her scan, was able to show her just her turbinates and her sinus and what I was seeing. And I told her I was willing to bet that she had a polyp or something going on up there, and I recommended that she go see an ENT. So the doctor, who I'm very good friends with now, sent her to an ENT, and he and I had dinner a few weeks after that. And I asked him how it went, and he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, they found a polyp and papilloma, could be precancerous, so they performed surgery, and they're going to be monitoring." And so she came into work that day just thinking she's going to be, trained on some machine, and now she can breathe. And so that just goes to show there's so many more issues. There's so much more to care for on these scans. So another incidental finding, but while it's not something that the doctor's going to profit from, it's a trust builder if she were just a ordinary patient. But being able to find that and really change her way of life, change her dealings when she wakes up and she breathes in for the first time and she's like, "Oh, here we go again." So that is all fixed now.
Wow. Alex, so one question that I know many patients may have with regard to 3D scanning. You mentioned that, and just a question that I have, because I'd like to understand this as well. You mentioned that one doctor in one case was scanning free of charge. Are there any downsides to scanning in terms of, I know for x-rays, there's some low dose of radiation. Are there any health risks to these scans, or can you speak to that at all?
I mean, you certainly don't want to every time the same patient comes in, scan them over and over again. And but I know a lot of doctors are very, very nervous about the amount of radiation that really anything puts out. And the reality is, especially in dental, technology has come so far that most machines out there have a low dose function or are very, very low dose. So for a 3D image coming out of our machine, if they're going to get one taken, they would get the same amount of radiation if they fly from here to California and back. A round trip flight would be the equivalent. And I've said that to patients who are getting scanned, and they really understand that. Their eyes get big. They go, "Oh, that's it, great." And at most, you might get an effective dose of radiation from a really high def, large field of view scan,
right,
of maybe let's call it 130 effective dose of radiation, while a medical CT can put out between 2,500 and 3,000 for effective dose.
Wow.
So it's incredibly low. And especially for a pan side, if they're doing 2D, even if it's coming from a cone beam, it's much, much lower than a full mouth series with a sensor and a tube head. So it's not something to really worry about too often. And even if you get into those discussions with your patients about, do you eat bananas? I mean, bananas have radiation, and a lot of them don't know that. So it's
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was in one office recently where they had a banana chart where every scan they had an equivalent amount of bananas.
Bananas.
And they said it really puts their patients at ease, because you're going to have those patients that are nervous about it, but at the same time, it's far more detrimental to them to not treat their dental issues than to give them a little bit of radiation, because you do get radiation every day you walk outside. You get it on airplanes. You don't see. I love the airplane one because you don't see pilots just falling down in the street. And they're up in the air all day. So it is not a massive concern, and I noticed it's becoming less and less of a concern as well. So that is a nice thing. But again, I mean, it's far more detrimental to have these oral issues go untreated than to scan them. And if you have a patient that refuses to be scanned, I would refer them somewhere else, because you don't want that type of liability on you for having dentistry going untreated.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. And so I think we have another case here that you sent over in advance, and this actually relates to a case that resulted in additional revenue for the office. I think case 1 and case 3 resulted in additional revenue. So let's hear about this one.
Yeah, so this particular doctor took a 3D scan to plan for an implant case at site number 19. And while he was planning, looked next door at tooth number 20 and found an abscess that did not show up on a pan that he had taken. So that's added dentistry right there. That is an easy conversion for the doctor. In this particular case, the patient opted for an additional implant, so he ended up getting a whole nother implant case out of this. He was able to have that conversation where, if this abscess does go untreated and we place this implant here, then this could negatively affect the fresh implant that we're placing, among other issues. So that is just new dentistry that was not found elsewhere, and just a very, very easy conversation for the doctor to have. I mean, it's a very obvious issue on the scan. It's very easy for any patient to see and say yes to. So that, again, added dentistry, found dentistry. It happens every single day with 3D.
Yeah, the images, I think, tell, they say it all. And seeing is believing. I'm thinking about putting myself in the patient's shoes. If my dentist, who's here in Charlotte, fantastic dentist, if she showed this to me, I would want this to be resolved immediately. Yep.
So that was just a bonus image we wanted to throw in here. That is not from the previous case. And so the previous case, the implants went in great. This, I just wanted to throw in this bonus image because while I do speak a lot about just found dentistry and the massive value of implant cases, a lot of doctors originally get into 3D to keep them safe. and to have more predictable cases. And this is a prime example. So this actually came from another doctor. Kind of a interesting story. This doctor was dragging his feet on implementing 3D and said that he was only placing the slam dunk cases. And I hear that every week. And I only do the slam dunk cases. I do it based off 2 dimensions. I reflect a flap, and I see everything. And this is one of those doctors. And he jokingly, this was not one of my doctors. This is from a different representative who is friends with this doctor. And the doctor told him jokingly, "I can't wait to see all the lingual and buccal plates that I've placed implants through." And he said it just very facetiously. And then the very first scan that came out of this office was on his assistant, and that's what you're seeing here. And he had placed this implant on her based on 2 dimensions. And this scan comes out, and he scrolls to where he had placed the implant, and sure enough, it's going through the lingual plate. And so his eyes got large, and his assistant's eyes got pretty big too. And she said, "What are we going to do about this?" But that just shows that based on 2 dimensions, nothing's slam dunk. It doesn't matter how far you're going to reflect the flap. You need to know where the nerve is, where these lingual undercuts are. There's so much that you're missing. So there is a big factor there with just keeping you honest, keeping you safe, and keeping you out of a courtroom as well, with the fact that this technology is available. And I do have it on very good authority that a 3D image is going to be the standard of care probably within the next year when you're placing implants, and possibly very soon with endodontics as well, with the amount of missed canals that we see. But these will keep you safe, very, very safe when placing implants, doing endo, all that fun stuff.
So we're talking about image quality and ease of use, and so I think just from the images that we've seen thus far, I mean, it's crystal clear to me. I'm not sure how that stacks up against other images, but how does image quality stack up against some of the other offerings that people in the webinar may be familiar with?
Sure. So our image quality, it's something that really gets us in the door. I hear from a few doctors that they think our images are photoshopped when they first see them. And especially our 2D pan images that come out of our 2D systems, but also our CBCTs as well. And a lot of them are blown away when they get the machine installed and actually see those images in their own office. So the benefit to us making our own machines top to bottom, making our own sensors, is that we have full control over the quality. And the fact that we began as a sensor manufacturer is a huge part of that. So we can use a much higher end sensor and but not have to pay a middleman to make it. If a lot of our competitors try to provide the same kind of sensor, same kind of image quality that we do, they'd price themselves right out of dental. So that's where we stack up with regard to image. And on the 3D space, we have built-in metal artifact reduction that really cuts down on metal scatter that a lot of doctors are used to seeing. So you can't treat what you can't see, and having a quality image is imperative to that, and also a fast scan time. A lot of people don't think about that, and but if your patient's moving, if the scan is taking a long time, if it's like a stitched scan, I don't know if you ever heard that term, but some machines do a stitched scan where it will take multiple passes and then allow the software to stitch it together, and those typically take a long time. I know there's a few out there where it takes over a minute for them to scan the patient. And how often is your patient going to move, swallow, breathe in that time? And our most popular selling machine, the longest scan on that one, we have something called a G2 16x9. It's one single pass, and the longest scan you ever take on that is 9 seconds. While if you did it in the low dose mode, it's 4.5 seconds. I mean, it is incredibly fast to get all that detail, but you lessen the risk of patient movement. And also it's better for patient comfort as well. They're not sitting in there having this thing go around their head and wonder when they're going to get out. So I think that's a huge piece of it.
That is, that's the first major part of the formula. Again, we know and now we have more clarity around the winning formula. And we know that when you pair advanced imaging tools with modern and reliable IT, we see and you see a significant increase in efficiency, revenue, and overall profitability. And also the opportunity, based on what you shared today, it sounds like an opportunity to do good, to do some good, even if they don't, dentists don't generate additional revenue for everything that they find. It improves the overall health of their patients and outcomes, health outcomes for their patients, whether it's dental or otherwise, different modality. So we will talk about part 2 of this equation, and we will talk about it briefly. Alex, if you would, just sharing just a few anecdotes about where you've seen IT providers fail or thrive, and the importance of IT in your view.
Oh, it's when someone purchases
I know that was an unexpected question, but I do think it makes it matters to have your view tee this up, because look, as an IT company, we will talk about it all day, but it's helpful to hear it from someone else. I think just an honest account of how meaningful it is to have quality IT versus otherwise, and what that would mean for the success of a practice that's looking to implement Vatech.
100%. I talk about IT in every single sales process. It is so vital for what I do as well. If a doctor says that they do not have an IT company, I've actually offered to back out of selling them a cone beam. That's how important it is. And if their practice is not being managed by an IT company, it can cause issues, especially when you're adding this much technology into your practice, or the offices who they have a brother-in-law, or I've got a guy that I met on Craigslist that fixes things from time and again, and or I've heard of other companies where they might use a company, and I will ask that company how many dental offices, or if they're big in dental, and they always say, oh yeah we have dental clients, and I'll say, how many? It's 5, 6. There's so much integration that goes on where these certain companies, I don't mean to badmouth them, but I would rather not work with them because there's so many software. They need to speak nicely.
And please don't name names on this webinar, please.
But I'm a huge advocate for having a team of people behind your network, a team that is responsive, who will be there on a cone beam install, or at least be there remotely to help network it in. Because most imaging companies, they don't want to touch your data. They're not going to get involved with your database. And your dealer is not going to do that either. You need an IT team to be involved with this. So it is paramount. It is absolutely paramount. And I would rather, I'll work with any doctor, but I do implore every single one of them to have solid IT support, for sure.
Yeah. And I believe that's part of the reason why Vatech selected us as their partner, because of our knowledge of dental, but also in all the various systems, but also the uniqueness of the dental environment. As Alex mentioned, there are lots of different sensors, or lots of different things that you find in a dental environment that you would not find in, say, a CPA office, or IT environment that supports, a law firm. And to speak to that, we have Jesse Clemens on the webinar, and I would love to hear from Jesse.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Reggie. So we train extensively on all dental practice management softwares. We have a lab here at our headquarters where we test sensors, where we work with imaging software, practice management software, and look for ways to modernize that approach and to deliver a more robust platform to our doctors, and also keep things like availability and security and cost, top of mind to make sure that we are being more than just an IT company, but actually a trusted advisor and a business partner. And to that end, I'd like to touch on how we use the cloud to serve up servers and as you see here on the screen, scalable cloud technology. So I'd like to begin with a scenario, and that scenario is your current server is getting to the point where it needs to be replaced. So not only are you faced with a capital outlay of thousands or even potentially tens of thousands of dollars, you're also playing a bit of a guessing game, and you're guessing how much computational horsepower you're going to need 3 to 5 years from now, and that's a difficult thing to do. And if you guess high, then you're paying more than you should, and if you guess low, then you face potential performance issues before the new server has reached its end of life. Again, that 3 to 5 year sweet spot. But with AWS, we can scale up your server infrastructure on demand. Say if a client were to call Iris and say, I just acquired another practice, or business is booming, and I need my server to be twice as powerful or 20 times more powerful. We could make that happen in less than 15 minutes and with zero capital outlay. And conversely, we don't like to talk about this, but if business is slower than expected, say there's a global pandemic, we can scale down your server infrastructure to match your needs and ultimately to save you money. Something that isn't really possible with traditional physical servers. And we call that right sizing. And it's a big advantage when it comes to cloud computing. You never again have to worry about paying more than you need or needing more than you have. And there's something else I'd like to touch on before handing it back over to you, Reggie. And it's the fact that the risk of hardware failure is also no longer a concern when you're running servers in AWS, right? That risk now belongs to Amazon. And they've taken extreme measures to ensure that their platform is as resilient as it can be. The days of worrying about bad hard drives or even a broken water main, right, are a thing of the past. And I'll touch more on that in a bit, but I believe, Reggie, you're going to tell us a little bit about a modern approach to mobile workstations.
Yeah, so I'll quickly touch on this. What we've seen, it's important for the people on the webinar to understand that only recommend partners or technology that we believe share our values and or technology that we use ourselves. So mobile workstations or workstations on demand are called AWS workspaces. And on a daily basis, I use AWS workspaces. And you pay for them on demand. You can pay for them on a monthly subscription or an hourly subscription. We can size them on demand. And more importantly, it supports BYOD. So the device that you connect to your remote desktop does not matter. So we've seen an increasing amount of interest in remote desktop, particularly for those environments that have remote employees, given the pandemic. But work is being done, was being done increasingly more mobile prior to the pandemic. And I think the pandemic has accelerated this. But, the takeaway here is that there are options available to you if you would like to mobilize your workforce and perhaps have your admins work remotely or even access your data remotely. AWS Workspaces is a great option, and it's in my opinion, it's far more robust than simply VPNing into your environment or using remote desktops that were designed and hosted on other platforms. AWS has certainly got this one right, and I'm not just saying that. I rely on it on a daily basis, and it is a solid product. So
yeah, and just to add to that, Reggie, I think it's just it's so impressive. It's just a sign of the times. I haven't flown in a while, but the last time I did, I was accessing my Iris corporate desktop from my iPad while connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. It's truly a modern approach to mobile workstations. But I know we're also going to talk about secure data backups, and that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. But before I delve into backups and disaster recovery, I'd like to touch on something a little more broad. And Reggie, I think it's very safe to say, and you'll back me up on this, that the question, when we're out talking with people, the question that we hear most often in regards to AWS is my data safe in the cloud? And the answer to that is unequivocally yes. The AWS platform, it's kind of impressive. It goes through a rigorous and continuous vetting process in order to maintain, I think, over 50 security and governance certifications. The ones that are most applicable to our discussion today are HIPAA, High Trust, and PCI DSS. And we can also take a look at who is using AWS. And in terms of the federal government, it's a veritable who's who, but you have the Department of Defense, Department of Veteran Affairs, the CIA, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They're all running workloads in AWS. And if you look at the private sector, you have companies such as Netflix, Facebook, Intuit. The list just goes on and on and on, and they all run workloads in AWS. And I wasn't aware of this until recently, but Netflix is actually Amazon's biggest customer. And Netflix also closed their last privately owned data center back in 2015. They run their entire operation inside of AWS. So if AWS has a problem, then Netflix has a problem. And I really can't think of a stronger endorsement than that. So now let's talk backups, right? So there are two acronyms you're likely to hear when discussing backups and disaster recovery, and that is RTO and RPO. And I promise I'm not going to get too nerdy around either of these, but RTO stands for Recovery Time Objective, and that just translates into how long does it take to restore business function following a disaster? Traditionally, this can take days or even weeks. You have to order a server, wait for it to ship, wait to receive it, get it configured, and have your backups restored. And you can wind up being down for days. Even if you have a spare server ready to go, and this is something that Reggie, we've been solving for a while now, just simply transferring the backups to the new server can take hours or even a day or more. And with AWS, we can spin up a server in minutes. And because of the way they handle data on the back end, we really just attach the most recent backups. There's no transfer taking place, right? So when you think about it in those terms, you're taking your recovery time objective, your RTO, from days or hours in the best case scenario, literally down to minutes, which is, I think, something, just a testament to the platform. So the second piece of that equation is RPO, and that stands for Recovery Point Objective. And this refers to how stale your data is once business functions have been restored. Let's say you take backups every 30 days. I know that's no one's reality, but just for the sake of the scenario, you take backups every 30 days and your server dies on day 29. You'll lose an entire month. That's the recovery point objective. Your data is going to be a month old when you get back up and running. Now, most modern backup solutions take backups anywhere from every 2 to 8 hours. However, most dental practice management software recommends not running backups during the day for performance reasons. This is, again, something we've been solving for a while now. And that means it's possible to lose a day's worth of production. But given AWS's Cloud Endure service, it provides sub-second RPO, meaning your backups are pretty much mirroring your production data in real time. So if there was a disaster, you're not losing anything. So, and this type of technology, for the longest time, was really only attainable and affordable by the largest enterprise organizations. But now, because of AWS and their presence in this market, it's attainable by single practices. The SMB market broadly can leverage this service, and depending on the size of your practice, it could be had for less than $100 a month. And because of the way backups occur in AWS, there isn't that performance hit that the practice management vendors warn of. So we can take backups, again, pretty much a constant stream of backups so that your data is up to date to the second. And I have one last point before turning it back over to you, Reggie, and I think you probably know where I'm going with this. AWS guarantees 11 nines of data durability. So 99.999,999,999. And I didn't really understood what that meant the first time I heard it until it was put into these terms. And that is, if you upload 1 million files per day, you are guaranteed to not lose more than a single file once every 10,000 years. And that's kind of a mind-boggling stat if you think about it. And if you take a step back and you look at RPO and RTO and guaranteed durability and cost, I truly believe that AWS provides the most robust and secure means of backing up your critical data. And with that, Reggie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, it is truly a mind-boggling stat. And, it speaks to what I touched on earlier. As we select the partners that we team and team with, we select best of breed. We select partners that we feel match our culture, but we also select partners that we use. And so we entrust our data to AWS, and which is why we recommend it to our customers. And so when you take everything into consideration, the durability, the accessibility, paying only for what you use, kind of that consumption-based pricing model, the security, all taken together, you essentially have a more modern IT infrastructure at equal or less than what you're paying for currently. And as it's as a company that has these conversations, and not just, I won't even speak for the company. I'll speak for myself as a person that has these conversations almost daily with new prospects and customers. We're committed to meeting every office where they are. So we will not come to you and recommend and shoot and tell you to shoot for the moon if your budget can't support it. We meet every practice where they are, and we will design a solution that is customized to your specific environment. Particularly in this environment under COVID, we know that practices are not looking to spend more for their IT. But the good news is that you don't have to spend more for your IT to modernize your IT. And so if you go back to the equation, advanced imaging plus modern IT delivers greater profitability. And with that, I'm thinking a lot about what the giveaway should be. And I truly believe that we should give something that's of significant value. And so my free gift to everyone who's attending this webinar today is that we will provide a comprehensive network assessment. We will, and it's free of charge. And so what is involved in this? Because many companies will say they will give you a free assessment, but all free assessments are not created equal. So our free assessment includes a comprehensive network scan, an analysis of those results, a review of any current expenses that you have with your ISP, your internet provider, your phone service provider, any vendors that you have. We will review those contracts, those invoices, and we will present you with a comprehensive report. Generally, these reports are 50 pages plus, but it'll have an executive summary at the front of it, showing you clearly areas that you can either save money or areas that you can get better for the same money that you're spending currently. And we'll also have a few other recommendations in there that will likely be no cost to you. In many cases, there are changes that you can make to your environment that are free that will improve either your security posture or other things. And so we will give every attendee on this webinar that for free. I believe, Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you. I believe you had also an offer for today's attendees.
Currently, we are offering our free handheld X-ray with the purchase of one of our 3D devices. And depending on field of view, in addition to the free handheld, I mentioned radiology readings before, something we are offering for a few select machines that we carry. is 5 free radiology readings from a board certified radiologist, and also 5 free 1-hour consultations with that board certified radiologist. Many doctors ask me, how do I get better at reading these scans and that sort of thing? So this is huge value for that. And so what they do is they'll send you a full report on every slice of data from your scan, and then they will walk you through that report and go through what they saw, what it looks like, how to read these scans as well. So those are the add-ons that we are offering currently.
So with that, I think we will move into Q&A. And I see we have a number of different questions that were submitted. So I'm just going to pick out a few of these. So this very first one I will take. And the question is, on average, what kind of performance increases do your clients see when switching over to your IT services? Do they notice a difference? And I think it's a good question. When we think about performance increases, it's really a result of removing many of the existing issues. For most of the customers that become customers, when we go through the assessment, the initial assessment of their environment, we identify all sorts of issues that they may or may not be aware of. A great example could be they have slow internet. Their equipment is slow. They have software issues, legacy software issues, or recent software issues that are causing productivity, loss of productivity, and general employee frustration. And so simply removing those issues dramatically improves performance for new customers. Most customers will say, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I never knew that it was supposed to work like this." So I would say that's the type of scenarios that we typically see for new customers. For existing customers, part of the services that we offer is to continuously monitor their environment to ensure that these issues remain at bay. These IT systems, they require quite a lot of management, and they will not manage themselves. And so we fix the networks for new customers, and we, on an ongoing basis, ensure that performance is optimized for all of our existing customers. So hopefully that answers the question. But these are the types of things that, the way that your performance can improve, and opportunities for cost savings and other things are all identified within the free assessment that I referenced earlier within the webinar. The second, I think there's probably 3 or 4 more questions here. So, we have time for probably about 4 more questions. And let's see. So the next question we'll address is, how can practices make room in their budget for advanced imaging tools during our year, like we've seen this time around? So making room in their budget in the midst of a pandemic. For advanced imaging, I'll hand this one off to Alex and have him share a few thoughts on what he would recommend.
On little things they can do, maybe with changing certain things they're doing with their IT infrastructure, not necessarily cutting procedures or processes, but certainly modifying the more cost-effective avenues. But with regard to CBCT and budgeting, I've heard from numerous doctors, especially lately, that given the rates being so low, the financing rates, money is so cheap right now, a lot of them have begun to think about a CBCT purchase in a way of, rather than a capital expenditure, they're thinking about it as an operational expenditure and looking at their monthly costs with regard to financing, rather than, I need to spend X amount all up front. I actually have a great example of that. I have a doctor that I sold a machine to about a year ago, And he called me just ready to purchase a CT, and he and I have become friends since then. But I asked him how he got to that point, how he knew he was so ready to move forward. His mind was made up before he and I really even said two words to one another. And so this particular doctor had been placing implants using 2D for years, and he always wanted to place more implants. He wasn't placing as many as he would have liked, but he also didn't want to spend the money on CT originally. And in an effort to place more implants, he told me that he started taking more CE courses and watching webinars and doing his own research to see what other doctors were doing. And CBCT imaging always came up. Every CE course that he went to, every webinar he saw, every study that he read, CT was always mentioned. And he started wondering, what do they know that I don't know? Why do they feel so comfortable spending that kind of money while, I maybe am not that comfortable? So he started doing even more research on his own, just with regard to CBCT usage and the returns that officers are seeing, reading some studies with that regard. And one thing he said to me that I loved, he said, I came to the realization that it's not about how much a CBCT will cost. He said it's all about how much it's costing me by not having it. What am I missing? And fast forward to now, he's taking so many scans, and he's scanning patients that have been coming to him for years. And the proof is in the pudding. He's finding so much dentistry that he had no clue that was there. His monthly payment, buying it a year ago, he's paying about $1,100 a month. And just think to yourself, how much do you charge for one root canal? How much do you charge for placing one implant? The reality is that as long as you're using your machine and scanning patients, it really begins paying for itself right away. So that's what we've been seeing just constantly. I hear that all the time from doctors, just how they hate that they waited so long to implement the technology, because it begins paying for itself right away.
Makes sense. And the only thing I would add to that is one of the things that, again, one of the benefits of our free assessment is identifying areas where you're currently spending money that you can perhaps save from an IT perspective. So whether that's looking at your internet service bill, looking at your current phone bill, looking at what you're paying for other different types of software, seeing where there are perhaps duplications within your software stack that you can eliminate and streamline. That's all part of the assessment, and we work hard for our existing customers and for our prospects to identify areas of savings where they make sense. Sometimes it's a balance between cost savings and but also investing, right? And overall, what you want to do is you want to invest in the areas that give you the greatest ROI. And so we know that again, 2020 is difficult, but I think the question, it's not a question about savings, it's a question about value. It's a question about how do you generate more profitability? Well, that requires some investment, but based on what we've seen, you get a tremendous return on that investment when you decide to make it. Just a few more questions here. It looks like we got about 5 more minutes. The next question: how often are you seeing practices needing to rely on backups? I'll hand that one over to Jesse.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And the answer is it depends. If we're talking about someone accidentally deleting a document and needing it restored, we field those types of calls on a weekly basis. In terms of loading backups after a server failure, it's not uncommon. As servers move, beyond that typical 4 to 5 year life cycle, we see failure rates increase dramatically, which is why we have quarterly business reviews with our clients in order to be proactive and avoid that eventuality. Ransomware is a different beast altogether. We tend to see an ebb and flow. There'll be a rash of outbreaks, and then things will die down for some time, and then there'll be another big outbreak. And these outbreaks tend to correspond with vulnerabilities being discovered and exploited, which honestly, it makes it quite difficult to predict. We've seen a lot of activity this year. The FBI issued a bulletin, I think as recently as 2 months ago, that a ransomware variant was specifically targeting dental offices. So having said that, we have clients that we've managed for 10 plus years that have never suffered a server failure or a ransomware infection. And I've heard horror stories from colleagues in the industry about businesses that have gotten infected twice within a 3-month time span. The bottom line is that the bad guys, they only have to get lucky once, whereas your security posture needs to be able to withstand not only the unknown, but also human error. And having said that, I would say on average, a business would need to recover from their backups once every year or two. But we know that these attacks are getting more and more sophisticated. So I would expect that number to increase, unfortunately.
And how long on average does it take a practice to get back online? I know you addressed this earlier in the webinar, but in a minute or so, could you shed some additional light on that? Because we got another question about that specifically.
Yeah, of course. So with traditional backups, we usually see a recovery time of at least a day. There's a lot of factors that take into consideration. How responsive is your IT team? Will they have to coordinate with your practice management vendor, so on and so forth. And even with like up to minute backups and your IT team sort of waiting in the wings, it's not uncommon to see a day or more of downtime while backups are restored. Even in a small practice, in terms of personnel, they can have a very large data footprint, especially if they're capturing 3D images. And all of that data has to be transferred from your backup appliance to your production server, which that in and of itself can take hours or days, which again is why we've partnered with Amazon Web Services and their Cloud Endure platform, because by leveraging Cloud Endure, we can eliminate that data transfer altogether, which drastically lowers recovery times across the board. So in summary, I would say traditional backups, at least a full day of downtime. And with a product like Cloud Endure, I would say more like several hours.
Very good. And let's see. So the last question goes to Alex. And Alex, you ready for this? There's one question that came in late that says, how long would it take a practice to start seeing a return on investment in regards to advanced imaging tools?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. Something that has been noted by just the industry as a whole with regard to CBCT is that the average cone beam is paying for itself within the first year to a year and a half is the average. I know it's a pretty short and sweet answer, but that's the reality. I mean, as long as you are using the machine and scanning patients, then you're going to find enough dentistry to pay for it very, very quickly. I know I have some offices that get caught up in how much do I charge to take a scan, and that's not how most offices are paying for it. The machines are paying for itself by the found dentistry, those incidental findings that you did not ordinarily know were there. But to take it a step further, being able to show your patients those findings increase that leads to a huge increase in the yeses, the case acceptance. So basically what we've seen is a year to a year and a half before the machine on average is paying for itself.
Very good. Very helpful. Well, look, it's 2:00 on the dot. I really appreciate the number of attendees that we had. We had a overwhelming response to this particular webinar. We will likely have this webinar again, given the interest, and we really appreciate everyone's time. Thanks so much for joining. A big thank you to Alex and Jesse for participating, as well as Alora for coordinating all of this, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.